Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today in this Oracle Hospitality How-To session. This is the first of many sessions we are planning for you as quick bites to show you how to conduct certain tasks or run processes in our various solutions. In today's session, we are very happy to cover the how to set up and run the report scheduler in Opera version 5, as well as in Opera Cloud version 1.20. My name is Jatin Bhatt, and I am a Senior Solutions Engineer for the JPAC region based in Singapore and have been with Oracle for about 14 years. I predominantly focus on our hotel solutions. With me is my colleague Maria Paula Bosanti, who is a Senior Implementation Consultant for Opera PMS. She has been with Oracle since 2012 and is based out of Melbourne in Australia. Before we begin our session, can I please direct your attention to our safe harbor statement? The main intention is to state that we are running this session for your information and to provide some guidance on how to set up the report scheduler in Opera. I will now pass on the mic to Maria, who will run through the agenda for today's session, and will continue to cover the topic of the day. Maria?
Hi, Jatin. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me. On today's agenda, we will go through what scheduled reports are and how we benefit from this functionality in Opera. We will go through the requirements that you need to set up in your property for activation of this functionality. And then we'll go through the steps on how to use this both on Opera v5 and Opera Cloud. Finally, we will share some extra resources you can refer to after the sessions in case you want to find out more about this tool. The report scheduler is an enhancement over your single one-time report generation in Opera Miscellaneous Reports. And it's especially handy when multiple reports need to be run on a regular basis. They will run simultaneously and automatically. Instead of running it one at a time, we can set a time and frequency for them to run regularly every day, every week, every month on a set date. And on top of that, they can be set to save or sent to a preferred destination. As part of the benefits of scheduled reports, we have chosen to highlight that it's fast and simple to use and set up, and also the distribution. You get if you decide to distribute through emails, you get the email within the minute after the report has run. By using this tool, we can have Opera run the same set of reports at the same time every day, which can assist in your standard operation requirements by setting your shift reports or certain information you need to have as managers or as agents on your day-to-day basis. It is also very useful to do as data backup, since every report after running saves a file. So just by running, even if it's not being sent out to anywhere, it's still saving a copy of that report at that time of running. So we will go through the prerequisites or requirements to set up report scheduler. So if you are on Opera version 5, whether you're hosted or on-premise, the first thing you would need to do is go to your application settings in setup. And within the general group, there's a setting called report scheduler, which you will need to turn on. Furthermore, a user will need to have the permissions listed on the slide to be able to create and manage schedule reports. And finally, if you wish to use email delivery for your reports, you will need to enter a delivery method on that path on property delivery method general. Those are all requirements in the configuration part of Opera. If you're on Opera Cloud, then we're talking about administration, Opera controls, and activate report scheduler. We activates report scheduler functionality. In this case, that needs to be turned on. Furthermore, the user will need to have the following tasks attached to be able to manage reports and to manage scheduled reports. Those are the names of the tasks on the screen. The delivery method is not required on Opera Cloud because that is already set up for your environment. And like I said before, it's only required on Opera v5 if you wish to use email delivery. Other options for Opera v5 are fax, text message, SFTP, or folder delivery. We will cover more on this a bit later. So now we move on how to set up a report scheduler. We will start by seeing how it's done on Opera version 5, and then we will show you how to do it on Opera Cloud. In Opera v5, we have two ways to get into report scheduler. The first one is by navigating on your menu to miscellaneous report scheduler. Otherwise, you can use your keyboard shortcut. That would be Alt key plus M and E. When you open the screen, you will get the image you see right now on the slide. The top area of our report schedule screen is the search area, like as usual in Opera. We can use the top of the screen to search for existing report schedulers. Some of the filters we can apply are the report name or file name. Then we can set also the user, which would be the name of the user who scheduled the report. So if you have different users accessing this tool, you can maybe search only for the reports that you have set up. We can also search by property in case you have a multi-property environment and you're sharing with other hotels. Our actions in this area next to search, apart from search, of course, are clear to get rid of any filters that we may have applied already. And the reports action right below clear will display all the reports that have already run. The next section we refer to as the management section. It will display all the reports, schedules that are currently active and running. We can filter this list by using the search on top. And from this screen, we have all our actions to view report schedule to run. We can choose to edit, delete, refresh, and also the option to run now, which is we can use to test whether a report is working. Finally, the bottom, and we will come back to this bottom section later, but this is where after we have created our report scheduler, we can add further distribution options. This can be email, SFTP, the ones I mentioned before, and then we can set up some parameters. To create a new scheduled report on the screen, what we will do is click within the Manage area. We will use the New option. Creating a new report schedule in Opera v5 consists of 3 steps. Opera will prompt us to complete each in order. The first one is to select which report we need to run. If this screen looks familiar, it's because it's the same one we use to run reports manually from miscellaneous reports. So you would be familiar with how to search for a report on the screen. What's relevant for report scheduler is that at this stage, we can select which will be the file format we want to run this report on. Our options can be PDF, XML data, delimited data, or rich text format. And then if we want this report to be emailed, what we can do at this screen as well is select the fax/email checkbox before we move on. After we have selected our report, which in this example is a trial balance, and select their fax, email, and our file format, we can click OK to continue to the next screen. The step number 2 is to set up our schedule. This is how often and when we want to start running our report. At the top, we enter a start date and a start time. This is for the first time it will run. And if we are doing repeating intervals, it will always run at the same time of day that we're entering on the screen. This time can be edited at a later time. As a general rule, we do not advise schedule to run too many reports at the same time. So we advise that if you have a set of reports that you want to schedule, that you do it maybe at 1 or 3 or 5 minute intervals from each other and not all run at the same time. The next section is the repeat section. We have several options that allow flexibility. We have to enter how often we want this report to run. Our first option would be once only, which will only run it upon creation of the report schedule. Otherwise, we can select minutes, hours, days, weeks, or months, and then the every field would be the number of how many times the report should run per minute, per hours, per weeks, or per months. Like every day, every 1 day, every 2 days, every hour, etc. Depending on the options we choose between minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months, the options that we see highlighted on the right of the screenshot can unlock. So for example, if we select weeks, then we must choose which day of the week it runs or days of the week. Or if we select months, we can select a specific date and time, or like the first Monday of the month or the second Tuesday and so on. It's very flexible. If you're using Opera 5 but are currently hosted in a cloud environment, what we recommend is that you run them at least using hours and not minutes. This is the same as before. We try to avoid running reports too often, just in case our reports requires a lot of data to process. We want to get them out as fast as possible. So recommendation is to run at least hourly, but not every minute. And then finally, the repeat section at the bottom will allow us to define when we would like the report to start running. If we leave the indefinite button selected, then it will run basically forever or until we manually delete the schedule. Otherwise, we can then enter a date and the time in which we want the report to stop running on its own. To go to the next step, click OK. If we have selected that we wanted fax or email on that first report selection screen, then we will get this extra step where we get a destinations pop-up. On the screen, on the name field, we can type the name of the recipient of the email or look out of our Opera profiles in case we need to send this to a customer or a guest. From email will be configured in our delivery methods. That's one of the requirements that we mentioned earlier. And finally, to email, we can type the email of our destination. Click OK to continue. And finally, the third and last step is to select the parameters for our report. The parameters are unique for each type of report, so they will vary based on the report we are working with. Here are just a few examples. Our recommendation is that you set these reports parameters carefully, perhaps test them first using miscellaneous reports, just to make sure you have the correct selection for your schedule. Once we have saved this schedule, it is not possible to come back and edit these parameters. What you will have to do is just delete and start again and set the parameters one more time. So it's best to test it and make sure you have your correct selection. Any date filters that you have in your parameters, just set the dates for the first report, for the first run of the report, and we will show you later how to make these dates dynamic. Once you have finished making your selection for parameters, the save button or like the next option will be to click on preview. Now, preview usually gives us a preview of the report. In this scenario, in this context, what it will do is save the changes and close the screen. And this will be the last step to create our report schedule. In this case, the report schedule is already created. So this is taking us back to that first main screen and the bottom section where we can edit the distribution list and set the date for the parameter. So for distribution list, when that is selected, we have new, edit, and delete options on the right. Out of our new options, we can select an email if we haven't already. And from this screen, a subject line for the email is also available with a pop-out menu option that will contain tags or fields available from Opera, such as your hotel name, the name of the report, and the day it is running. If you want to add multiple addresses on this list, you have to separate them with commas. So you don't have to do one new distribution email for every single person. You can just do the one line and do a list of addresses. It is also possible to save to a folder within the application server by choosing the folder option, or to an SFTP, which is a shared folder in your network, by choosing the SFTP option. Secondly, on this section is selecting parameters. So that's the second option below. If our report allows us to set dynamic dates, a button will pop up called Set Date on the right. When we click on that button, then we get the Set Date menu options. In this case, we have some selections. By default, it will use the report date, and then we can use the calculation buttons in the middle and use plus or minus and the number of days we want to subtract or add to the report date. And this will make our date always dynamic. After you have made your choices, at the bottom of that set date screen, you get an example. So it says if the report was started on a certain date, then based on what we have chosen, the parameter date will be. If you're happy with that choice, you can click OK and save it. That would be the last step to customize and create our report schedules on Opera V5. And like I said before, when you go into that option, you have the option to edit report schedule, but not the parameters. So make sure you select those correctly before you save. Now moving on to our report scheduler for Opera Cloud. In Opera Cloud, we can navigate to Report Scheduler by going to Menu, Reports. And once the page loads, the I want to green section at the top will have Schedule Reports. Once we are on the screen, we can also search among existing report schedules using the filters in the yellow area, just like on version 5 of Opera. We also have an Executed Reports tab that will display the submitted and completed reports, and you can view the status once the report is completed. Our options to manage scheduled reports in the screen are displayed along the top of the results list. Right here on the screen are highlighted in a red square. Our options are New, Edit, Delete, Run Report, and View Destination, and they all behave in the same fashion as they do on version 5. If we wish to inactivate our report rather than deleting it, we can click on the On button right next to the report schedule, and this will inactivate it. It will stop running, but it's still there on the list in case you want to reactivate it in the future. Deleting will get rid of it for good. To create a new schedule report, we will go to the New option that's displayed along the top of the results list. Our steps in this case are clearly displayed at the top of the screen, and we must complete all the steps before setting up our report schedule, just like we had on Opera V5. The steps are the same, the only difference being that the report parameters are defined earlier in the process. So for V5, report parameters were our third steps, and for Opera Cloud is our second step. In the first step, once more, we select our report. We have search options. And in this case, we're searching for a reservation report, and we select reservation with rate changes. We will click next to go to the next step. The next step is set up the parameters. The steps at the top, the train at the top displays that we have completed the first part. We can use the back option and go back to that part at any time if we need to. As we explained previously, the available parameters change depending on which report we have selected. In this case, the dynamic dates are set in this screen. We do not have a set date option afterwards. So when hovering over any date parameters, there will be a brief hover pop-up description on how we can set dynamic dates. It is similar to version 5, as in it will work with minus and pluses for date calculation. For example, this report is set to look for data 5 days before it runs up to the day before it's running. So that's a -5 and a -1. These parameters, unlike on Opera v5, are editable at any time. So if you need to come back and change, you don't have to start a new schedule from scratch. You can always come back to the screen and change it. We will click Next at the bottom to continue. The next step is the repeat intervals, which would be our schedule. The options given are the same. We can do it. We set up a starting date and time, and that time it will run every day. And then we can run it once, or the same intervals as we saw before: minutes, hours, days, weeks, and months. And just a reminder, we do not recommend to use minutes as an interval. Please use at least hours or days. Also, as a tip, we wrote it down there to use Central European time. So depending on the environment you're hosted, your report schedule might be running at a central time instead of running at your current local time. So just in case, if you set up a report schedule and you notice that instead of getting it at the time you set, you're getting it a few hours before or after, it might be that you need to use Central European time when you calculate the time. It will depend on your environment. We'll click Next to continue. And the last step is the destinations or distributions list. In this case, we select our mode. In the example given, we have selected email, and then we can just type a list of recipients for our email. In this case, in Opera Cloud, to separate an email from another, we use semicolons. Other distribution options, such as SFTP and folder, will be available depending on your environment. If you find they are currently not available, know that they are being on the way. They are always on the roadmap. After clicking Save, that will be our last step to create a schedule in Opera Cloud. And I will hand it over to Jatin for the next section.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for this informative session. I'm sure our audience will find it useful in setting up the report scheduler for their properties. Now, do join us again on Thursday, 8th of August, which is in the next couple of days, for our next how-to session, where we will cover tips for operating procedures for schedule maintenance, selecting the best reports, and how to set up shift reports. Okay. Now, before we end this session, I would like to show you, where to find some helpful resources online. The Oracle documentations page, or the docs.oracle.com, provides some information about Oracle products. Service information about Oracle products and services with guides, APIs, content for use cases, and targeted solutions. Okay, so the Oracle Hospitality page provides documentation that's specifically related to hotels and casinos, and this you can find at the URL shown on the screen. Okay. Now here I'd like to show you how and where to gain access to documents and information relating to version 5 and Opera Cloud. And I want to particularly show you where the version release notes and the user guides are. Okay. So depending on the Opera version that you're on, you can gain access to information relating to the Opera version your property is on. The user guide is especially handy to have for your operations. You can either access the user guide from the application itself at your hotels, or you can bookmark this page via the public portal should you or users need help. Okay. With the Opera help, you are able to access any of the help topics you may need from the user guide, either by drilling from the main page or search for a particular topic via the index tab, such as the help topic for report scheduler. Okay. So feel free to access our help page if you need more information after this session. We hope this session was helpful guide to set up report scheduler for your property. Feel free to reach out to our support team via our My Oracle support or the MOS portal for any assistance, or your local sales account manager to engage our consulting team to assist you with setting up or training. Also, please also reach out to our local sales account manager if you have any questions or wish to know more about other upcoming sessions like these, particularly for the next session that's coming on Thursday, the 8th of August. So thank you very much for attending this session and have a good day.